Hello everybody and welcome to the first video for the records section of Sight, Sounds, and Conversations. This will be the introductory video, so we thought what better way to get into this than doing what we're about to do with this record video. And before we do that, let's get to a brief introduction of who I am and what we here at Sight, Sounds, and Conversations' YouTube channel primarily do, which is the following. OJ93, DJ Prom Night, Young Sheep, all over. We even have an art gallery. With that preview you just saw, we're interested in media, art, anything and whatever it is that you deem as a creation of yours or anybody that you think has something to share with the world. And along with that, how does this merit itself into this record video and what we are going to be doing further along with this record section? Well, truth be told, the way that this show started, Sight, Sounds, and Conversations, is the same way that this record section of this channel is going to work. And it all ties back to the same thing for all of us, wherever it is that you may be watching from, which was the events that took place in 2020. Whatever it is and whatever it was that affected you, we were all affected in one way or another. And with that, the inspiration for what we're doing here at Sight, Sounds, and Conversations began. But along with that, I personally, as a somebody who really enjoys music and has always taken a keen interest to it in the way of how people express themselves, I figured it'd be no better than to maybe start looking at people's collections and looking at what people were doing around the same time, as a form of distraction. And I was really touched to see all the different types of people from all kinds of backgrounds that began and have been already collecting records pre-pandemic. And you know it's great to see all of the types of collections and people that collect different types of music, whether it be modern, more mainstream type of music, whatever genre you see or deem as mainstream or artist. Just take your choosing as your personal thing. And people that were collect stuff more nostalgic to them, things more related to maybe a form of I don't know, would you maybe consider professional background if one of these people on these videos happen to be like owners of a record shop and they're sharing records, game collectors, you name it. And throughout the course of not doing Sight, Sounds, and Conversation as a host, I again just found it as a really great gateway and distraction, but also bringing it back full circle to what it is that I enjoy about music. And it's that despite and regardless of where we all come from, we all have different things that connects us musically. And through that, I really hope that, insert anything that you or myself would like changed in this fucking world. And I'm not necessarily being too, careful, but again, the way that I see a lot of the music that I'll be sharing with you all today is the same way that I see a lot of people, whether it be artists or just people who happen to really enjoy music, which is, I don't know the entire story. And as a person who really enjoys music a lot, I always want to know more, and I always think about music the same way I've always thought about literature and reading, which is, depending on what you're reading or what album you're listening to, it makes you think of an entire world, not even just to that of what you're currently listening to. And even on a technical basis when you're trying to maybe think about something. If you're a musician that you're trying to draw either some inspiration or something from, I think that the same way with a good book that leaves you just wanting for more in there, you start to I wouldn't say idealize, but to start putting together some form of hmm, what's the proper word? Some vision, I would say, is more adequate to what I'm trying to express this. But where I was going with this is that the way I've applied my appreciation for music and even the way that people have shown their appreciation of such things like records is, you know, I think it's a form of open vulnerability that I wanted to take a part of with doing this introduction, which is why I'm doing this. uh, I'm repeating a lot of words and I am noticing that, but it is making, I think, at least to me, it's making somewhat sense. But where I was going again with this is with this introduction to this record, series intro here, um, I just really, again, want this to be both an intro to some people that may have seen videos already online of record collections or may want to get into them, and maybe, I can share some records that maybe some of you would like to own or give a listen to, as with what I do being a host of Sight Sounds and Conversations, I already try to keep my musical palette as open as I possibly can, but I never think that I'm the most open person or I've heard the most music. And this is also a form of reaching out to people to maybe leave their own suggestions or advice on certain things that you may see here or I may talk about, as I don't claim to know every single thing and I'm not here to really teach. I just want to connect with a lot of you through the same means that I've already felt that I've been doing, which is through music and media. And with all this sappy stuff having been said, let's go ahead and start. The way that we're going to be doing this is fairly simple, which is behind me I have all of these records, and this is pretty much the most part of like what I own. I have some more records outside of this room here, but it's not much more that you're saying you're missing a big chunk. Um, Throughout the series of records that I will be showing some of the ones that are outside, but I don't think that's something that I will be sharing. I think it will probably seem like they're all an endless supply of records coming from this background here. But this all here has been pretty much an amalgamation of things that I've bought through the past couple years, things I've been given, um, things I've owned for quite some time. And I've let that collection build up enough while doing Sight Sounds and Conversations to the point where I felt finally that I could be comfortable enough to share these records that I have behind, talk about them, maybe bring them back in different episodes that I want to do in the future of this record series, and talk about either the reasonings of why they're purchased, why I think they'd be good to have on record, maybe give a couple of what some may find as controversial takes on some of the artists that are in the collection, and why I think personally that when it does come to art of any form, creation, media, whatever, any of you, again, regard people making stuff is concerned, I think, again, there should be a definite line to which where one should just think there is a really big distinction between an artist and the creator. And, well, that's about it. You guys can fight me in the comments or just forget about whatever I said. But with this collection here, I've pretty much amassed different artists, different genres of so forth and so on. And Well, right here at this bottom, I have a couple box set things that I've gotten recently, but I also have a collection of artists ranging within the Throbbing Gristle, Psychic TV, Coil Camp. On this side here, I have 45, some box sets, and albums that I have yet to listen to on record, but I may have listened to already digitally, but I will also let you know if I haven't listened to them at all. And behind here are all these records that I've already listened to. The way that we're going to be doing this introduction episode here is pretty fair and simple. With all this been said, given, and done, I really don't have much of an order with that because I've been just doing sight sounds and conversations, and I've just gotten to the point where I just put any of the records that I have already listened to up here on this bookshelf, and the only big thing that I may have already put together here are these like David Lynch assorted records, but even then, it's not at the top of my head. I just already know for a fact what it is I have here on that part, and that's pretty much about it there. And probably on this side here too, I have a mixture of a lot of Damon Albarn's work too. So the reason I bring all this up is because, again, I am going to be taking a fairly blind pick of the records to basically introduce this introduction series to what I own here on this record collection. And the reason I'd like to do that is to put myself as bare as I possibly can to the word. And definition of that is, I don't know, I just wanted to be as exact as I could without necessarily um, seeming that it's all really scripted. Even in the way that I'm currently um, recording, I had already given myself an idea to what it is that I wanted to talk about or how it is I wanted to reach this point. But after that, all of the records being picked out and chosen for this, it's all pretty much a blind pick. So I will be as honest as I can, at least on the spot, about all these records. And with that, let's go ahead and start. So with that, let's see here. And I will probably be doing about 8 records as well. So let's just go ahead and start with this, which is, oh, Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders and the London Symphony Orchestra, which, to any of you melon heads out there, he had already talked about this. For me, one of the big selling points to this record was the Luaka Bop record imprint label, which is put together by none other than David Burns of Talking Head. And it's a really amazing album. Not really what you'd expect to come out of the Luaka Bop imprint, but with the fact that the London Symphony Orchestra was involved as well as Pharoah Sanders, I wasn't expecting a big percussion-esque blowout like you would on some other Luaka Bop imprint releases, which I do have some of them as well. But I think that this album should be, if you don't own records and you don't have an interest and are just, again, checking out people's collections because you have a general interest in checking out music as well, I would, again, recommend this album. And I think I can't really speak to it as much as you should experience it. And this isn't just some pretentious mumbo jumbo stuff. I would, again, compare it the same way I was talking about literature earlier, where sometimes, as much as you want to really describe a book that you may have read and really enjoyed, you can't quite do it justice as you know it can be done if somebody just takes the time to read it. The same can be done and said about this album. It's remarkable. It's something that definitely can be put on at different times of the day or under different, I would say, even under different forms of thought. The next record I'm going to be picking out here is going to be, let's see, Oh, rest in peace. Rest in peace indeed. KMD, Black by none other than KMD. And this is the Metal Face Records re-release of it. I did jump on this really early enough, um, September of the year in which unfortunately Doom left us all and passed on. But this album, again, just like with Floating Points, is the this is just another release in which there can't be enough said about that hasn't already either been said or has actually played a role in influencing in music. And there I say, not just hip hop itself, I would say um, even design work. I could, anybody that was old enough that recalls the big era of the street art artists, I would say a lot of that played along to that as well. Um, one thing I will show actually, because I do think that this might be a colored release, or it might be just standard black. No, it is just a standard black release, but I don't want to necessarily get into talking about any specific song because this just is in laden and enthralled with everything that we all came to know, love, respect, and just really look up to when it came to the work of MF Doom. And rest in peace again. It's just another loss that we've had within the last decade already. I mean, just the last couple of years already, it started with big losses. I can't necessarily say that with all the events that have been going on, I necessarily was able to really still, and even still, take in the fact of the loss of Doom. Like, even at the moment of recording this, it still strikes me as a pretty big thing. My first introduction to MF Doom, to be quite honest, was um, the real introduction that made me, because I had been aware of his music unknowingly through whether it was video games or just listening to music in general. And this is back like in the early 2000s, you know, just searching around through whether it be like Napster or LimeWire or anything. But one I really got to know the name was through none other than Gorillaz's Demon Days album, November Has Come, that really struck a chord in me. And to be able to be a hip hop surrealist while still maintaining an ethos of poetry in your work and being able to still be a jester and being looked at as the anti-hero and have all this embodiment is something about MF Doom that I think anybody that has already given themselves the opportunity to experience the work and the whole body of MF Doom will agree again of why even just thinking about the passing of his, you know, presence here on earth is still something that's hard to kind of wrap your mind around. The next album I'm going to be picking here is going to be, let's see here. Oh, Cibo Mato, or Chibo Mato, however way you want to pronounce it, Viva la Woman, which is, if I'm correct, Chibo Mato's debut release. And this was also a anniversary release. I think it was for the 20th anniversary, or yeah, I believe it was for the yes, it was for the 20th anniversary, which means that this one did have a color variant, and those who do care for such a thing, I will finally take the opportunity to show you, which is one of the things that I will say on some drunken stupors throughout watching people's videos of their collections. Some people, they've gone to my OCD, and even talking about it already was making me stutter because of that. But here it is, handling records. It's just a thing. It's just, and I started realizing that people should probably not be dicks in the comments, and maybe we should just make videos like I'm already going for, and just showing like, hey, just handle it like this if you're gonna hold a record if you can, and just kind of slide it back carefully, because some of these sleeves that have rice paper, I do understand it could be a little hard to put in and put away. But now to talk about this record and this band. If you haven't heard Cibomato already, you may have already been exposed to some of the artists related to this release. And I did get this inner sleeve thing out just to get some of my proper notes, as well as I wanted to freeball it as much as I can here. And let's see. There's been variations of the band, which is why I'm looking up. And if I'm correct, this may be the one where it was also including Sean Lennon, which is John Lennon's son, who I think has some really amazing solo music as well. But Sean Lennon has been involved with this band. One of the members, whose name is Miho Hattori, has also been involved with other bands and other things that range a wide span of things from, I think, I definitely know that she was involved with Gorillaz' first self-titled release, which is where I got my first exposure to Cibomato in a sense. And I think the biggest song on here, too, because I'm not old enough to have really remembered things off the top of my head on the charts back in the mid to late 90s, but I think Sugar Water, which was also directed by Michel Gondry of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind fame, uh, directed the video for Sugar Water, and it's a pretty out there music video, but not in the sense of, you know, how do I put this? It's not a crazy video. It's more the storytelling of the video, and the device of which it's kind of told through is really what makes it really amazing and goes well with the song itself. I personally, let's see, where would I even start? The album itself with the song Apple, I think, is one of the best introductions to an album that is as diverse sounding as it is. Because this band here, oh, actually, I know one of the best ways in which a lot of you guys have actually know Cibomato. They were on the Jet Set Radio Future soundtrack, I believe. But yeah, no, I will put a small little clip in this little insert here. I love this album so much, but it comes from being either sample heavy to having little bits and flirtations of ambient with jazz and lounge, and they're really diverse musicians. But at the same time, I think for those that already haven't heard it, are pretty well and tastefully put together in a concoction that does not feel like it overwhelms the senses, or any one particular sense that it would be off-putting. Even, dare I say, the songs that are a little more abrasive sounding, they just sound more like the youthful spirit that they were trying or were embodying at the moment of which their songs were recorded. But Viva la Woman by Cibomato, which is a great representation of just the pure, unfiltered expression of not giving a shit. And honestly, one of the things I have to say about these artists as well is that they're pretty cultured, and I would say being traveled. Not that musicians aren't traveled, but they're ranging from places from like New York, Japan, England, all the different people that have been part of this have really put a lot of their places where they're from or have lived in on their sleeve when listening to this. And they did the same thing with their follow-up album. They later on released the third album, which was pretty lenient of both Yuka, which is the other main member of Cibomato, if I hadn't already said so, and Miho. But the other album besides this, which is right here, and I would pull it out, except I don't want to. Well, I'll pull it out either way. I'll just turn around to make it. But the follow-up, Stereotype A, is it's hard for me to say which one's better. And if any of you have actually heard of either of these albums or have listened to them, I would definitely love to know which one of them it is that you prefer. But it's really been a tough call for me for a long time to really be able to pin down which of these two albums I personally feel are not just influential to me, but are just personally my favorite. So we're going to move on to the next record here, and let's see which one I will pick here. Oh, well, this is a little extreme, but I will possibly just show this to the cover, which is the soundtrack to the horror film Necromantic, which I have always had a very big infatuation with, dare I say. So the movie has a really big philosophical, um, what should I call it, metaphor of why it is what it is, but it's at the end of the day a love story told in a really sickening way to also represent that very same thing. And I think for the era now, which has been really confusing, to have people really live and walk on eggshells in regards to either expression or whether just plain out living, and then to also have a thing where you have more of the erugoro, or the more gory side of manga and art also taking a lot of hold, is something that is like a fight or a tug of war almost. And I think that this movie is really kind of apt and appropriate for the time we're living in, even though the subject matter, which again I will also really hold very little of. But any of you guys that watch Wendigoon stuff, or Mr. Gigi, or who else? Basically anybody that's talked about these iceberg charts that go around on the internet have probably already heard something about Necromantic. But this soundtrack, and one of the best things for me about this soundtrack, is that just like the musical score to the film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Necromantic has also played a sorry about that, a pivotal part in being the artist or the musician I try to be when I make my own music and stuff. And it's funny how it comes full circle, because in these linear notes, which I don't feel really are much to be scared of showing, but in the linear notes here, they do go on to talk about how they came and conceived of the idea of the score for this movie, which ranges a really wide gamut of really beautiful orchestrational pieces, which are, I don't know if they're played on MIDI here, but they have this really MIDI-esque vibe to them that I love, while also having some really wretched, messed up violin pieces that are also really beautifully put together if you're into that type of abrasive, almost noise-esque type of compositions. This is really something to be up your alley. And you don't have to watch just the movie, but I will actually say that I do fear that if you just listen to the score itself and you just hear Necromantic, you may have a really big curiosity as to what it is that you're going to get yourself into if you were to watch the movie. So I do say beware when even listening to the soundtrack and not having actually seen the movie, as it may run a risk of, again, really heightening your curiosity about what you're getting yourself into. And given the fact that we are on the platform on which we're on, and I don't necessarily fear demonetization, but more of the subject matter being deemed too awful, I will just hold to the fact that the horror in the movie itself is what it is and what it's about than actually seeing as a traditional horror film. And that's one of the things I really do admire and appreciate about the work of this director, which I'm not German, as many of you could probably tell from watching, but I will try my best to pronounce his name. The director of this is George Budgiret, and the composers, because I for the longest time always thought that there was just one composer. It's actually various composers. Are Dr. Lorenz, John Boy Walton, Herman Kopp, and let's see. Yep, that's about it. And this is a numbered release, 452 out of 500. I did take a big jump on this one during like COVID shutdown, COVID time. I don't know, it's weird, but during that time, records weren't that expensive, or people weren't really looking to sell, or just it's weird. I'm sure any of you guys that have been collecting records can probably agree with what I'm talking about in this regards. I will take a quick little break and I will be right back.
The all-new special that will astound you with amazing escapes you won't believe. And that's just the beginning.
Just a patty flipping minute here. What the fuck?
Oh, getting a little scared about the possibility of demonetization here got me remembering that I can at least show you some of the things, because I can't open the gatefold. The gatefold has a really obscene, messed up image that I'm just not really down with, again, getting my entire channel nuked on barely starting it just to show a gatefold. However, and I will say this at the end, there is a way I can show more of the stuff that I can't possibly show on YouTube, but I'll bring it up at the end of this video. But this is the release of this, and one thing I gotta say is that it was put out by One Way Static, which they do a lot of I don't want to just say horror, they also do a lot of more of, it's hard to really put and pin down, because some people will say krautrock for like Popolvuh, or some of the more obscure artists that are more classically inclined. But they One Way Static puts out a pretty good amount of different things. But one of the things that they do put out is a really great soundtracks. Now, another thing that also comes in here that I'm not gonna try to show off to the camera. Oh yeah, one thing is a 45, which is great. It has the theme of the film that is pretty well known for. But beyond that, it comes with this postcard here that I will just cover up. And you just put that postcard on your record player and it plays the very well known track that the film's already known for. I really want the soundtrack to the sequel. For any of you that have already seen this movie, it doesn't unfortunately have some of the more, I personally think, memorable tracks from these two films, which again comes from the sequel, Necromantic 2, which, yes, it had a sequel, and the sequel did vamp up what it was trying to do even more. I would actually say if you like horror films and like horror films that really push the boundaries, I would say not even of horror, gore, edginess, but just pure all absurdism. One film that I could also recommend from Jörg Begiret's work is Schramm. Schramm is a really interesting take on something akin to Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, for any of you guys that have already watched that film before. But again, can't recommend the Necromantic score enough to those of you that may be interested and have the curiosity again to check this out. And the next record, let's see here, will be, oh, Rites of Spring. Rites of Spring, self-titled, which is, what would some of you watching consider this that may know? Early emo, screamo, hardcore. what I do know is that two of the dudes in this band were involved with, I believe it was like Minor Threat or Fugazi. It was one of those bands. I'm not gonna again claim knowledge at the top of my head as I'm just choosing shit, and I'm not a fucking AI being whatever it is that some people believe happens to you when you get like poked in the butt because of Dr. Crunchy. But yeah, this album is great. It's I would consider it more akin to emo personally, honestly, but it's not bad emo. It's pretty good stuff overall. I mean, the imprint that it comes out of Discord Records, to any of you guys that really give an interest to more punk-oriented music, is something that comes out of the camp of Ian Mackay of Minor Threat, Fugazi fame again, and various other people, and they've put out a lot, and I mean a lot of different artists, ranging from Void, Rites of Spring, Minor Threat. Was it Minor Threat? Fugazi? I don't know. I'm spacing out here on that. But they did hold a wide range, and I still feel like they have a presence as I've taken a look in Bandcamp. They seem to be pretty well in live, just like another big punk imprint, Alternative Tentacles. Big ups to Biafra, who is another great and amazing record collector that growing up took a big part in inspiring me to going ahead and collecting records. Now I've chosen records from these two shelves, so let's go ahead and go down to the third one here at the bottom. Let's see. Oh, I drew out two, so let me go ahead and put out back the one that I may have drawn out first, which was this. Oh, Trans Am coming out of the Thrill Jockey imprint. And if I keep saying, oh, is I always think back to the stories of when I bought these records, but this record was actually recommended to me from a person at the local record store here in town that I go to, which is House of Records. I don't know why they called it dad rock, but it has a really good Kaya-y, safer, lightning bolt, jammy, balls to the walls, nuts to butts, just rock. Like I can't. I know I haven't been really good at describing these albums, but they're all pretty out there albums, and this one is no stranger to that. I was really glad that the person that recommended this to me, I had already built enough of a rapport to have the comfort to take this, because I wouldn't just I wouldn't just spontaneously buy something that I wouldn't necessarily trust the opinion of somebody. And the way that the record is put together, I don't know if digitally I haven't heard it, but physically, I don't know if it was put together in a way that it runs almost like a program. And I say like a radio program, but it's almost something that has very few lyricism to it. And even at the end of one of the sides, it comes with a locked groove, so it keeps you in this loop. And the droning is, it's called A Single Ray of Light on an Otherwise Cloudy Day. And boy, does it really bring that truth when you listen to that locked groove of that track. I would probably say a track that I really enjoyed off of here would be Technology Corridor. And one of the reasons I would say Technology Corridor is one of the tracks that I enjoy is because, well, flat out and simple, I think, again, these guys overall for their release did a great job at naming the tracks and how they sound. And you really get that sense of being in some form of technological corridor listening to this track here. All right, we're getting near the end, so I'm gonna choose something from this side here, and let's see what I pull out. I'm just gonna show this. I think most people that are watching collect records don't even need to bring this one up. We could probably play a record collector bingo, and this would probably be like on the list of things that people that listen and are open to collecting records of any kind and just experience more than just music, you know, as far as like your appreciation and how deep it goes. Yeah, this is probably has been something I've seen over and over and over again, whether it's been on YouTube videos, Reddit, on my personal online social media accounts, but I've seen it been collected, and I'm really happy that it has been. I was always, as a kid growing up, wanting these things to being physical and I mean, I knew that they had CDs of the actual soundtracks, but I live in America. I wasn't able to have access to some of those, and even when there was things like FYE, Tower Records, Sam Goody, whatever sold, they rarely ever carried stuff like this, and when they did, most times it was probably gone by the time I was able to buy anything. And most times back then, CDs didn't necessarily cost, or I don't feel like were as accessible price wise as they've now become, and as how I believe even stuff like this has kind of become. But what the hell do I know? I'm only 30 and I didn't know about inflation and economics and blah, 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 blah for me to be able to tell what was really expensive now or then. Just getting a little water here. Let's go ahead and pick out something from this side here, which is the more industrial, dark, witchy, whatever some people want to call it, because I will get to this when I share this. But here is something from, oh, Coom Transmissions. Coom Transmissions is the proto product of what later on came to be known as Throbbing Gristle. And what Coom Transmissions did was pretty simple. They were performance artists who dealt with a lot of absurdism, really believed in a lot of different absurdist artists, and Genesis Peorage, Cozy Fanny Tootie from the group, and I would later say Peter Christopherson came to join as well, who, to some of you that like this kind of stuff, is also a part of Coil and has also played a pivotal role in the art collective known as Hypnosis, that also played a part in putting together some of the most well-known music records of the 70s and late 60s, and to a degree the 80s, ranging from Pink Floyd albums. Storm Thurgerson was one of the people that was part of Hypnosis, a big part, doing album sleeves for Peter Gabriel, UFO. It just goes on and on. But before all that, these three people were in Coom Transmissions, and they did a lot of absurdist things, dealt with a lot of things with trying to change yourself. I will get to just putting it as basic and as simply as put. And here is Genesis back then. Rest in peace. And the enigma that they have become, and by they I don't mean just Genesis, but also Coom Transmissions and what later on came to be Throbbing Gristle, is something that has showed a lot of truth, and I would say a lot of form of, I guess I wouldn't call it smugness, but a form of quiet I told you so at the end, to the likes of things like, I guess, punk and early what came on later to be known as metal, in regards to how this that was early industrial. This wasn't even industrial. That's the thing. They were. This is just noise reading some, and by noise, it's not even electronic noises. Now we now know with like Mersbow or such, but or Purient or Prurient. I don't know. Some of you guys can go ahead and talk better than me and record a better video than me, and get back to me below. But anyhow, Coom transmissions. They're just trying to really, I guess, wake you up without trying to really tell you anything and for you to draw what you want from certain things. And they really told that line really, really thinly and well, enough to a point where I would say just along with the likes of Kraftwerk, De La Soul, I would say Throbbing Gristle has also played a huge role into some of the music that a lot of people are either creating or producing today. Because I think a lot of the production values of what Throbbing Gristle has done has played a role as well as in some of the work of maybe people like Arca. I would, I mean, Throbbing Gristle was even like sampled by Jay Dilla, and I do know that. I will have a small little bit here.
Out. All I wanna see is my clout. Then I go digging out my honey, celebrating till she out.
But back to reality.
I gotta.
Oh, it's just kind of interesting seeing how a lot of this music that has been around and work has been around for so long has actually been around, making itself prevalent within all the different spheres of people's communities creatively or pockets of wherever part of the world that any of us that have liked a lot of this music are currently located or are from. And Coon Transmissions showed the same way that I feel a lot of different groups and collectives still do to this day, that um, just doing what you really want to do, and also knowing the proper, I would say, repercussions of putting yourself on the line and come with. I think they show that the payoff, even as belated as it may be to some, still makes itself a thing worth wanting to get if one does set themselves out to be an artist or creator. Let's see, we'll do two more and we'll get to the end of this, but let's go ahead and draw out. Bad Brains, band in DC. There's a lot of controversy, and I'll get to it right away, regarding this band because of the Rastafarian beliefs of some of these people and the way that they're inclined, especially for people of LGBT backgrounds. And this is one thing that I am always and have been aware of. However, I'm not friends with the people in the band, and I am a person that again appreciates music and what it has done and how it's played a role in. Unfortunately, it has been a thing where, like today, with certain comedians having certain beliefs and still yet playing a pivotal role, I think builds a lot of relevance again to maybe somebody and a group like the Bad Brains, because even with taking some of these controversies, some people probably have known them for, have been a band that, because of also their background, have had quite an uphill battle to get to the place where they once got, I guess, at a peak. And I will say that because, from my knowledge, one of the members of this influential band isn't necessarily doing too good, but has the access to being able to profit off of these things being sold. So I think it's well enough to try to put an older person that, although has some egregious beliefs, out from the streets and fed, and just, you know, insert whatever belief you have about wanting to help and wanting to maintain people from being homeless. in here, but it's nice to, again, with what I do with Sight Sounds and Conversations, to being able to again feel that with the support I'm putting into my local record store and also to other local record stores that I purchase some of these used records from on Discogs, that they're able to maintain and keep away that predatory work and ethic that a lot of the record labels had and have profited from when it comes to maintaining or keeping artists in the spotlight. So feeling I'm playing a role in that doesn't give me a personal quaint feeling of, oh boy, I did a good thing, but it gives me a nice feeling that we're again still trying to keep artists by themselves doing things and not having to again succumb to a predatory system that, like many other predatory systems, may not necessarily give what may be or should be rewarded for the work that has been put into some of the music that a lot of us have enjoyed. Here we go with one of the last things I will draw out from here, and let's see what it is that I draw out. No, no, no. I'm not gonna draw one out if it's just drawing two, because that just, and they're not even like smushed together. I just, having my back turned like this and also not trying to bend them makes it like where two records are coming out. Oh, it's funny that this one would come out during this time, seeing as how it's recently been making the rounds in the hip hop circles, and that is In My Lifetime Volume 1 by Jay-Z. And I got to have a nice little talk and opinion on this, which is Jay-Z is an amazing artist and a great business person. Do I like him very much as a person? Me personally? Not really. But it was nice to have bought this used at the record store for $12, and boy, is it a great album. I like the fact that Jay-Z fucking mixed it up on this one and even has some samples from Kraftwerk. And one of the things that bothers me about personally about Jay-Z as an artist, and that brings it down where I understand him as a business person, but me as being a art snob here, I gotta say this album's good. I just heard people trying to be like, oh, this album, and he from what my understanding was from reading some of this articles, is that he thought this album could have done much bigger and better numbers than what it did in the singles. But I think some of Jay-Z's best rapping was on this album. Like personally, I think he mixed it up well, and it was. This is the kind of thing that I gotta say that when people talk about great and best rappers that care about that stuff, I can understand why people defend Jay-Z so much. This album's great. It's also coming from an era which here back here is him, kind of flossing on us all a little and flexing by showing that he was at a Biggie show, they were friends, and there's a lot of like Biggie on this album just by the way that like you can tell Jay-Z was affected by Biggie's passing, as a lot of people were and still are. It's really well and rooted to the, I guess, humanity of what is the man known as Sean Carter. And my respect to the overall album and his body of work, as much as I may have my opinions on him as a person. It's a really Damon Dash. I mean, I'm sorry. Again, as a hip hop fan as well, seeing some of these things coming up recently, and now that they've been out for so long, like this album's from '97. Okay, again, I'm 30. '97. I was still actually a kid. You know, I didn't really know much about this, but I would hear some of these tracks, and to see that again, a lot of this hip hop, I would personally say that maybe the bling era hasn't necessarily, until just maybe a couple years to maybe half a decade, has been making its presence been influential again. This era of hip hop still remains to be part of that really like just really well tasteful part of what is the continuing influence of the hip hop culture. Now, give me a second for a drink. That Jay-Z part got me a little, how do I put this? Interested to do two more records, and I will finish it. But yeah, no, I really want to hear what some of your guys' recent hip hop records have been that are currently watching this or watch this at any given moment. I will try to get back to any of you guys as promptly as I possibly can. But one of my favorite things has been personally collecting hip hop records. The way in which some of these records, I would personally say, I've been hearing things, and I'm not too uh, aware of it personally, but I've been hearing that some of like the really mass, super produced records are coming out with some issues, like the Outkast records. I heard certain things about the Kanye records. I can't personally attest too much to that, but I will say this, that I am not going to knock Crossley record players down, but there are certain records that for one reason or another, it would be better if you had a much more upgraded record. Like, for example, one thing I've noticed online that not a lot of people talk about, and any of you guys that know about this can go ahead and write stuff in the comments about what the hell it is that's really going on with this, but there's certain records that you can go ahead and put on a Crossley player and they will play just fine, and there's others that you put them and they'll just skip. And I've seen people on Reddit that are young, and I don't have a Reddit account, I just like looking through Reddit accounts and seeing Reddit accounts or Reddit threads, whatever it is it's called, because I don't think you actually look through a Reddit account unless you're looking through the personal username that commented. Whatever. A lot of you guys don't need to explain this. You guys can explain to me. Anyway, the way that I've seen it in a lot of these videos or in a lot of these posts on Reddit and record threads and a lot of the record r slash pages have been that there's been people like, why is it skipping? And I think it might have something to do with the weight on your player, and I haven't seen a lot of people actually making, again, if you have or know of a video that does, please put it in the comments. But there's a reason why those players sometimes won't necessarily play the song or the album straight out. Besides some of the people that have made the mistake of playing 45s on the 33 speed, and they just sound like this, you know. But yeah, I would say that be on the lookout and the watch out for that, which I would also say it's always great to start getting into Discogs and looking into what the markets, for those of you that collect on a more serious level or are doing it to the equivalent of how some people use the stock market or NFTs or whatever have you thing that people use as a hobby to invest money. But those of you that just want to collect for fun like I do because you like music and whatever have you, I would still suggest that you still look up on Discogs to see, because on Discogs you might just be buying it from somebody else just like yourself, sitting in your room or wherever you're at, and just has it there, and you don't know how often, because sometimes something that can go for really high or expensive can go for, like, for example, let's see here, and this is one example. Let me go ahead and find this here. Okay, this record here, which is Star Trek Entertainment, the Neptunes Present Clones, which, if any of you guys know, that's Pharrell old little imprint that he had, where the production group between him, Chad, and I forget his other name, but this is an amazing record. But I bought this on Discogs for literally under $10. It's a DJ version of it, but and when I say DJ version, it's not DJ as how we're thinking in today's terms. This was a radio version of it. So it does have unfortunately, some of the form of censorship that was pretty prevalent in the well, I wouldn't say late 90s. I don't know when this started. Some of you guys that may know, I would love to know. But that whole, like, I know that some of you guys know what I'm talking about, but they wouldn't just add beeps. They would do, like, not even record scratches. It would sound like the CD itself was scratched, like glitched. It was a really weird, peculiar thing that even to this day I haven't seen copied musically or somebody satirizing it. I've seen so many weird and obscure things satirized or referenced, or but that particular form of like music editing hasn't even been brought up or mentioned, which it would be interesting to see being brought up in one way or another. But yeah, if you don't mind that, which kind of, again, for me as a nostalgic thing, makes it a little more endearing. You get some really good deals like that. But again, given the fact that I did see the controversy that happened with that Taylor Swift release at 33, and not that her album was called 33, but it was pressed as a 45 and people were playing it as a 33. I just thought it'd be a nice thing to kind of remind or give people a little piece of advice on that, because again, I really appreciate people's music and record collections on whatever it is that they are collecting or whatever it is. I even saw a video like a couple months ago, and it was the oddest thing ever because this person really liked One Direction, right? And maybe had a really good expansive collection, but their knowledge of the record collecting thing wasn't that good. So it was kind of heartbreaking to a degree to see that, something that they cared for was not being cared for in the proper way. And I just, instead of really personalizing that and being like, well, it's their dumb decision or looking at it that way, I just kind of started looking around and I see that unless you go to specific, threads or anything as such, which not a lot of people either do or have the time to do, um, they don't get the proper techniques unless you want to go watch Henry Rollins be condescending to you. Which, nothing against him, but this is the thing, and you put it on the spindle, and gotta love him or hate him for that. And I just don't think a lot of people have that acquired taste to have somebody tell them that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to give a little thing on that in addition to what I was saying with some of the bigger albums that are multiply, massively pressed aren't necessarily as faulty as you may think. So don't send them back and don't do that just yet. Maybe invest in getting a better player, because not always, for the most part, will you have those kinds of issues. Myself, as a person that has been collecting records for quite some time now, have not really found the record misprint to be so consistent and constant, which is why, again, for people that collect records, some stuff that are even misprints of either a label or something out of a factory can actually be valuable to some that, again, care for those types of details, which I personally am not, but I've also seen that it has been a thing as well. And uh, one more little water break here. One thing that I have also noticed that I would like to mention too is that if you don't have the time to, or have the money yet, or think your collection is big enough to, it's always nice to try to in, at least buy a kit. And I think I have it here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it by just looking here. It seems I do not have it here off the top of my view here. Let's see. Speaking nonsense. But I do have this, which is a roller. Some people prefer this, which is sticky and you have to kind of wash it with warmish water. Don't put it on your fingers. I think this is pretty, you know, common knowledge here, but you'd want to have something of this sort. Or, like I said, again, you want to have the brush and the other. It's it's like a it's kind of hard to explain. Another thing you could have that's always nice to also look into, so your records sound as clean as they possibly can, is getting this little stylus gel that you put on, and I think I have one right here. This is a old stylus that I recently, because I listened to enough music that I thought it'd be just good to change it. I'm not sure entirely what the time or how much, but I read somewhere something along the lines of 200 to like 300 to 500 hours. I don't know, something along those lines. And I know I definitely topped that between 2020 and late 2021. But here is the, it's gonna be out of focus a bit, but here is the stylus, and this is the old one, so I'm not too concerned, as I'm not ever gonna really use it again. But you would just basically put this here on the stylus, just barely, and it would just clean up whatever dust or whatever form of trash that has amassed from your previous record listening. And even with that, I gotta honestly attest and avow to the fact that it will make a big difference, and you will get to enjoy your records a lot better than you previously thought you were already doing. And if you do have something more like an Audio Technica and such, it's always good to do as much research as you can with the model that you have. And the reason for that being is that there is enough of a, depending on where you live, there some of the local record stores may carry styluses, needles, whatever it is that you need for your record player. Not all of them, so it's always good to check. Like, for example, I don't think that most record stores will actually sell more intermediary, amateur, professional, whatever you want to call, record players, unless it is that, they have either a website or they're a big enough place. But most like malls or stores, or even like, again, independent record stores, will sell Crossley record players, which again gives to a degree a valid reason as to why I don't personally believe that those record players are such um, destroyer murderers of records as people make them out to be. It's just good to be um, a little more aware of what you're playing and what you kind of care for. I would say Crossley record players are great if you have a lot of yard sale purchased albums or stuff that are like super mass produced. I would say go for it if it plays it well and stuff, and you just want to have it outside or playing it for a little bit. But if you're really going to go into like super deep musical listening, it would be better to, again, maybe look into getting something more like an Audio Technica, or any of the other players that people get, whether it's more of a Sony or a Pioneer or any of the varying kinds. People have all their different likes, but for myself, I currently own an ATX 120 USB model, which I recently got. And as recently, by that I mean I broke down and got it when things kind of started shutting down for some reason. I wonder what happened. But anyways, I got that at like around the time things started happening like that, because again, ooh, scary thing, I was actually using a Crossley, and I was also using not an Audio Technica, but I was using a new mark that, you take it out to go sample, if you're a DJ, you want to go mess around, and you have those, like, it was fine. But once I started actually seeing that I was buying more collector-esque or more fragile or old or out of print releases, I felt inclined to upgrade to that. So don't I guess where I'm getting at with this is, don't ever feel scared to going ahead and upgrading, or actually going online and asking around. And this is one of the reasons why, even with this introduction video, I've wanted to do it and be the way as I've been today, which is just me. To I guess for those of you that haven't already purchased, that are still just looking and glancing around through YouTube, for different collections and to get that different inspiration to buy music or to just collect stuff physically, just go ahead and feel comfortable to do so. I think you would definitely not regret it, that's for sure. So let's go ahead and get into last two releases or records here that I'm going to go ahead and share, which, let's see here. Well, I drew the last one from here. So let's go ahead and let's see, more towards in the middle. Oh, right. Groovy Kaiju, still groovy. Unless you're one of my friends in the vaporwave community or you're super into just absorbing music like a sponge, I don't, it's not that I don't think you haven't heard of this, but this is definitely a rising phoenix, and I'm being poetic because look at this guy. This guy is, and I will disclose, is a buddy of mine. We're not super close friends. I don't want to necessarily speak on his behalf, but I see him as a buddy friend of mine. Has been on the show Side Sounds and Conversations. Here's a little preview. And one of the things about Aaron Turner, I hope he doesn't feel bad, but I mean, your name's in the back, is that such a joyful spirit. For any of you guys that have heard Future Funk, and that's, music like Saint Pepsi, Luxury Elite, I would say even Macintosh Plus essences. Groovy Kaiju takes all that and also takes essences and spirits of things from Jay Dilla to Madlib to early electro type music and puts it all together in what is still groovy. This cover here, like, he's there in Japan just living it up like the true fucking king he is. But my favorite track on this entire thing, and not just like for his, but like I would say in the last 5 years, has been one of my favorite songs, is Long Beach Airport. It gives an essence, and I keep saying that again because it's an overall really spiritual release that whether you're a person that's athletic or you just want to do something to make you feel pumped and enjoy to do things, this is a great album because it's also very subtle. It's not something that I would put it along the consistency of something like The Prodigy, like it's not that let's go, let's get pumped, but it's like, hey, let's go to the gym and have a nice workout, or hey, I feel like just going out and skating for a while, or having even for a chill cookout or a nice little drive. It's definitely something that's come from a person that's lived on a coast, specifically of the US, and it's put together very well, and it's released by a label in which I've also had the honor to have released music of my own under, which is none other than Pacific Plaza Records. So in the description, I'll probably have some links to Groovy Kaiju's work and Pacific Plaza Records as well. And I hope that any of you that have seen this and have seen it this far will check out the work of Groovy Kaiju and Pacific Plaza Records, which you will not be disappointed as well either. I think if you haven't heard Vaporwave or you haven't heard Vaporwave adjacent music, Pacific Plaza Records is one of the best labels, and I don't just say that as a biased opinion, but personally, this is what influenced me to want to eventually be able to have the privilege to release with them, was just the diversity, but also the accessibility to the diversity that has been put together by the lead of this label. So big ups to both Groovy Kaiju and Pacific Plaza. And we'll now get to our last record, which, let's go ahead and pick out another one here from the bottom of the bottoms, but not by any means that it's negative. Oh, Katie Lang's All You Can Eat record store Day 2020 release. I had been aware of Katie Lang's work by listening to tracks here and there, and also artists um, mentioning Katie's work, but I had personally never been able to sit down and listen or had the chance to listen to an entire album of. And I don't know where Katie Lang lies on pronouns or such, but this artist is really great at toiling a great um, androgynous line that I think artists that are also known for this, like Prince or David Bowie, do as well. And in that very same spirit, Katie Lang does that, but does it with a hint of country and folk, and it's a really nice and tasteful way. And this is probably what I would consider still somewhat a surreal album, yet has a really nice, again, accessible tinge to it that I think would make it a pleasure to sit and listen to whenever given the chance by anybody open enough, whether you're somebody that's just delving into the depths of music or whether you're a weirdo that tends to stick their nose up to certain sounds or styles. I think it would be hard. I would be hard pressed to find somebody that wouldn't at least say that they was maybe something enjoyable from this record, and it really does drive this home. And the fact that it was released also in 95 and the whole presentation of this just really also speaks to me in the way of how a lot of releases are put together now. This would look more like what a album cover looks like today, while this also reminds me of some vaporwave releases and music. And it's great. And it's none of those. It's one of those things where, like, again, music and artists and people that produce this stuff as well, because I also consider, like, the photographers, the music producers themselves, the designers, the art, everybody along with any of these albums that have taken a part in this, eh, they do a nice line of trying to present things in whatever way, and that really brings it back full circle to why I think a lot of people find a lot of endearment and joy in collecting records. It's something that's nice to be able to look at something. Let me go ahead and bring this as an example, like the Train Spotting soundtrack to, if anybody that enjoys that kind of stuff or any form of record. Like, here I have Mike Patton from Faith No More's Mondo Kane record, which it's one of my personal favorite releases, but even that, I just really love the overall album. And I think if you have been a person that, again, enjoys music on more of a level than, hey, I have Spotify, or hey, I'm gaming, or whatever kind of thing that people do when they just sit and listen to music or drive or work, I think collecting records is a really nice hobby. And I am looking to later on, once I have built more of a, what I say, repertoire here on the internet, and more of a archive of videos, and I've gathered a little more interest, I will be touching back on this, what I'm about to mention, in a future video. But I do have an interest, and I am open to playing some of these records through this player and maybe through Discord, and maybe having conversations with some people. And I don't know, maybe we could get to share more with people later on and talk about these releases and why we care for them and why we value them so much, enough to the point where we want to collect records, or we differentiate between listening to the different formats in which music is basically given to us. I'm not gonna, and I am also not a person under the belief that any one particular format ruins a song or a release. I think it sometimes, if not most times, to me personally, it may have more to do with the equipment stuff is listened to through than it may actually have to do with the overall format under which it's being put out. And with that, I mean like DAW, WAVE, um, FLA, those, all these different formats that music is usually put out under. I think again they have their different appreciations. Unless we're talking about being sarcastic and we're talking about having like a low hertz put out bit rate track, then yeah, it's gonna be a little. Ugh. But even then, if you're into trying to mix it up a bit, all this can be really, um, I guess, enjoyable to a degree. It would be the proper way to say this. And I do have, again, with all this been said, I have an interest in playing records and sharing more of these things that I may not be able to fully share because of copyright issues or such here through these videos blatantly. But I definitely am open and interested in maybe reaching out to more of you, whoever you are, that are interested in collecting records, and for us to, build an acquaintance, maybe possible friendships off of these things that we've loved so much, which are records or music. And the other thing I will also mention is, for those of you that have found this video or have come across it and not been aware of and have made it this far, I want to again remind all of you that the main and the main focus and drive of this channel, in which these videos are going to be hosted under, is for a variety show that we put together here at Sight Sounds and Conversations. And this is also a way of reaching out to any of you, not just that creates music, but also that are artists, animators, make short films, do anything that expresses anything that you want to go ahead and show or think people should see. We're interested in wanting to share and show that through our variety show. And if you know anybody as well, it doesn't have to just be something that is, you know, appropriate to you watching this. It's something that could also be appropriate to, uh, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your grandma. We just want to be able to know first and foremost, before that, we can respectfully and rightfully bring the work to a way that doesn't feel like we're stretching ourselves thin, as we are influenced by things such as MTV and early Adult Swim. But that doesn't mean that we can't find the way to present your work in a proper light. Um, we would love to do so. I will say though, if you are of a certain age that, again, that is younger than, I would even say 21, just for the sake of, well, I wouldn't say 21. What the fuck's wrong with me? Some of you that are 18, I left home at 16. But I just want to be fair and everything. Don't keep this in the dark if you're young and you want to be a part of this show. Please let your parents know. And like, we have to have a form of contact if we're going to be, because you are making your work and such. And I don't want it to be later on where I'm not promising anything, but if by your own accord you end up having a hit or something on your hands, I like there to be already a thing of your family's already aware of that kind of thing for yourself and for your own protection, rather than ours necessarily and entirely. It's more, again, of finding and knowing that you at least have that involvement from your family, and know that, hey, some guy or some person here is messaging, or said here on YouTube that they're doing a show and I make music, so I'm gonna, like, not like, really make sure that you're, again, if you're under 18, that your parent is aware and is even willing to get in some form of contact to, again, take a part in this show, as we're never opposed to any of that. We want to just reach out and make this that we do here at Sight Sounds and Conversations as accessible and as open a platform to any of you that want to go ahead and share stuff. Even yourself, maybe a YouTube creator that may think, well, we can find a way that, if you're interested in what we do, which you will see in the description below if you're interested in checking out what we do and what we can do to work together, as what we love here first and foremost at Sight Sounds and Conversations is making sure that we can all share our work with one another and to just keep the ball rolling. This isn't even about thinking who's the best or anything. I think, even for myself personally, when I don't do this show or even making these videos, I always try to think of, either way, personally, I see it as a win to either potentially have one listener, or maybe have people that like what I'm doing, or either have, you know, people that don't like it, but either way, I may potentially drive somebody to want to make something for themselves. And I personally enjoy all types of entertainment, media, art, to that point where my whole interest is trying to get more stuff out there, not just for myself, but for all of us. So I really do hope that you have enjoyed watching this with us. You have stuck around long enough. Thank you for allowing me with all my shiftiness, slight stutters, all the repetitive vocabulary and everything, but I wanted to be as forefront and honest. I wanted to be as truth and honest as I no, but what a dick. But I wanted to be as truthful as I possibly could and vulnerable to you all. So this doesn't just seem like a what's poppin', everybody? That's not like really about that life and that shit. And even when I do sight sounds and conversations, we try to push the envelope a bit, but that's with all of your guys' work. I mean, we've shown stuff like umami. We've shown other forms of animation, some music videos like you saw in that little preview, and I think it's less about my personality being the spotlight, but more being enough of a presentable host or representative for all your work. So I do appreciate again for any of you that are not just record collectors but are artists that have stuck around long enough to give me this opportunity to reach out and to introduce myself and this channel and what we're about here. And I really hope to see more of you guys around here on the channel and over at our twitch.tv/Codex Encyclopedia, where I can't promise anything will happen in your body, but one thing is for certain, you will be entertained and you will be at least moved enough to, I don't know, maybe find something better to watch because you can't stand the host, but you want to make a song at least or whatever. Just go ahead and check us out. And with that, that's about it. See ya.